Christmas Day, 1944. 15 P-38. Lightnings over Luzon, 20 Japanese fighters waiting for them. One man flew into that fight with his guns already failing. He flew in anyway. That man was Major Thomas McGuire. He was 24 years old. He was already the second highest scoring American ace in the Pacific. And on December 25th, he walked into a briefing room, looked at his mission orders, and volunteered to lead top cover for heavy bombers hitting Mabalacat Airdrome. Nobody made him go. Nobody ranked him into it. He stood up and said he would take it. What happened next is one of the most documented and least told air combat stories of the entire Pacific War. To understand what McGuire was walking into, you need to understand what Mabalacat was. Mabalacat Airdrome sat on Luzon in the Philippines. By late 1944, it was not simply an airfield, it was a launch point. Japanese commanders had turned it into the nerve center of a new and devastating weapon. Kamikaze operations were being coordinated and dispatched from that strip of concrete. American bombers hitting Mabalacat were not hitting a tactical target. They were hitting the infrastructure of a suicide campaign that had already sunk dozens of Allied ships. The Japanese were not going to let those bombers reach it without a fight. The P-38 Lightning was not a subtle aircraft. Twin engines, twin tail booms, a central nacelle holding the pilot, and a weapons package that included 4 50 caliber machine guns and a 20mm cannon. All of it firing from the nose. No convergence problem, no optimal range window. A P-38 pilot could hit a target reliably at up to 1,000 yards. Wing gun fighters of that era could not make that claim. The Lightning climbed at 3,300 feet per minute. It topped 400 miles per hour. It was faster than anything the Japanese had in 1944 by a significant margin. But speed was not the whole story. The Zero could turn inside it. Every P-38 pilot in the Pacific knew that. You did not dogfight a Zero. You dove on it, fired, and climbed back out before it could react. That was the tactic. Stay fast, stay high. Never let it drag you into a turning fight at low speed. The P-38 had been in development since the late 1930s, a design born from a need for long-range escort fighters that could reach targets deep in enemy territory and return. Lockheed's engineers had built something that redefined air superiority. The twin-boom configuration provided structural advantages that allowed for heavier weaponry without the drag penalties that single-fuselage designs suffered. Pilots loved the aircraft's visibility from the central nacelle and the redundancy of having 2 engines. Lose one engine and you still had power. Lose a hydraulic line and you had manual backup systems. It was an aircraft built with the understanding that combat meant damage, and damage meant needing to get home. By the time McGuire was flying it over the Philippines, the P-38 had already proven itself across multiple theaters. But in the hands of a pilot who understood its capabilities completely, who knew the precise moment to press an advantage and the exact moment to break off, it became something more than an aircraft. It became a weapon system defined entirely by the man controlling it. McGuire's 15 Lightnings had the altitude advantage when the Japanese came up. 20 fighters, not a patrol, not a loose intercept flight, an organized, aggressive formation that climbed straight toward the American bombers with intent. The P-38s pushed down to meet them. McGuire saw what was developing immediately. Several of his pilots were in trouble before the fight had fully opened. He didn't hold position. He drove toward the engaged aircraft and pulled the first attacking Zero off a wingman's tail. Then he found another. Then another. He was operating at the center of a moving, 3-dimensional brawl involving 35 aircraft. At certain moments in that fight, 3 Japanese fighters were oriented on him simultaneously. Let that sit for a moment. 3-1. In an aircraft that cannot outturn its opponent, with bombers below him that he was responsible for protecting. He kept flying. Here is where the details become almost impossible to explain from the ground. Somewhere in that engagement, McGuire's guns jammed. Not one gun. His guns. The weapons that defined the aircraft's entire tactical purpose went silent. A pilot in that position has 2 rational choices: break off or fake it. McGuire did something else. He maneuvered a Japanese fighter. He used his P-38's speed and positioning to force the enemy plane directly into his wingman's line of fire. He turned his own aircraft into bait, deliberately, under fire, with a jammed weapon system. The Japanese pilot died in his wingman's guns. McGuire had set him up. By the time the formation fought its way clear, McGuire had shot down 3 enemy aircraft, 2 A-6M Zeros, 1 Kai-61 Tony. He had done it while managing a disintegrating gun system, covering embattled wingmen across a massive air battle and absorbing attacks from multiple directions. The bombers reached their target. The mission was a success. Washington took notice immediately. The citation that would accompany his Medal of Honor described the engagement in clinical terms. Voluntarily led, attacked by 20 aggressive Japanese fighters, repeatedly flew to the aid of embattled comrades. Outnumbered 3-1, even after his guns jammed. They were not exaggerating. What the citation does not fully capture is the trajectory that brought McGuire to that cockpit. He had first fired at an enemy aircraft over Wewak in August of 1943, escorting B-25s. 2 Zeros jumped the formation. McGuire snapped his P-38 into a sharp turn and opened fire. The Zero burst into flames on his first shot. First trigger pull in combat. Enemy aircraft on fire. Within 2 days, he had 5 kills. 5 kills in 2 days made him an ace. The pace did not slow. By December 1944, he had accumulated 38 confirmed aerial victories. He needed 2 more to overtake Richard Bong and become the highest-scoring American ace of the war. He was chasing a number. Bong had already been pulled from combat. The Army Air Forces did not want to lose its most famous pilot. McGuire was still flying. Richard Bong's own story sits alongside McGuire's in a way that clarifies how extraordinary both of them were. Bong had found himself alone against 9 Zeros over the Pacific. His wingman gone, 9 fighters closing. His response was not to evade. He pushed the throttle forward and flew directly at them, attacked first, shot one down immediately. The sudden aggression scattered the formation. He found a second target in the confusion and fired again. Then he left before they could reorganize. That was 40 victories accumulated one engagement at a time. That was how the top aces in the Pacific operated. Not recklessly, precisely. Aggression as a calculation, not an emotion. McGuire understood the same calculus. After Christmas Day, he had 38. He went up again the next day, December 26th, and the fight continued. The Japanese over Luzon were not finished defending their airfields. Neither was he. The engagement on the 26th added to his count. 38 became something higher. The number the history books eventually settled on for those 2 days combined was significant enough that Congress authorized a Medal of Honor. The citation was signed. The recognition was real and earned. But the story does not end on a high note. It ends 11 days later, January 7th, 1945. McGuire led a small flight off Negros Island hunting Japanese aircraft at low altitude. He broke the rule he knew better than anyone. A Japanese pilot drew him into a slow, low-altitude turning fight. The P-38 stalled. He did not have enough altitude to recover. McGuire went in with 38 victories. He never made 39. He was 24. The Medal of Honor was awarded posthumously. Fort McGuire, New Jersey was renamed in his honor. Then the base absorbed Fort Dix and Lakehurst and became Joint Base McGuire-Dix-Lakehurst. His name is on one of the largest military installations on the East Coast. His widow received the Medal of Honor on his behalf. The citation described Christmas Day over Mabalacat. 20 fighters, guns jammed, 3 kills, wingmen covered, bombers delivered. That is what the P-38 made possible when the right pilot was in the seat. Not the aircraft alone, not the tactics alone. A man who understood precisely when to dive, when to hold, when to force an enemy aircraft into a wingman's gun with nothing left to fire himself. 20 Japanese fighters came up over Luzon on Christmas Day, 1944. 3 of them did not go back down.